Hello everyone, my name is Javier Medina, member of the UDS technical team, and in this video we're going to see how to deploy Linux desktops in UDS Enterprise. To do this, we will already have a pre-configured template machine, in this case is an Ubuntu 24.4 machine, and we will have a fully operational UDS 4.0 environment. And additionally, I should mention that the deployment of the machines will be carried out on a Proxmox platform. We're going to access the UDS server with an administrator user or a super user. In my case, I'm going to use an administrator user that I have in the internal Authenticator, and once we are inside, I'll go to the control panel, and in the control panel we are going to start registering the different steps to deploy the desktops. We will start by registering a service provider. In this case, since my platform is Proxmox, I'm going to choose this one. I will enter a name, specify the Proxmox IP address, its port, and a user with administrator permissions or with valid permissions to deploy machines on the platform. In advanced section, we can leave it as default and we will test the configuration. Once it is correct, we will click on Save, and that's it. Once we have created the service provider, we are going to create a base service inside it. So we will click on New, and in this case we can choose between fixed machines or clones. In my case, since I'm going to use link clones, I'm going to choose the clones option. I'm going to specify a descriptive name for this base service, indicate where I want to save the machines, in which Proxmox pool, and in my case I will enable the generated machines to use HA group. In the machine section, we will specify a base name which will serve to identify the machines within our platform. In my case, I'm going to name it Ubuntu, for example, and with the name length we will specify the number of numerical characters that will be appended to the base name. In this case it will be 3 by default, starting with Ubuntu 0.0.0, Ubuntu 0.0.1, Ubuntu 0.0.2, and so on for all the machines that are created. Now we will specify the template machine, and in my case I will select the Ubuntu one. We can check the next option so that instead of link clones, they are full clones. In my case, since I'm going to use link clones, I will leave this option unchecked. Then we will select the storage where we want these machines to be stored. In my case, I'm going to select this one right here. And the last option will allow checking if the hosts have virtual GPUs to be able to host virtual machines. In this section, there are 3 options, as we can see right here. The first one, do not check, will not check if the hosts have virtual GPUs and the machines will be created on any host. Next, or if available, will check if the hosts have virtual GPUs and will host the new created virtual machines only on the host with virtual GPUs. And finally, or if not available, will check if the hosts have virtual GPUs and will host the newly created virtual machines only on the host without virtual GPUs. In my case, I'm going to leave it as default on do not check. And now we will move on to the advanced tab. That in the advanced section, the first option is used to delete duplicate machines for this service. Next, keep on error is used to ignore all access errors to the service, thereby avoiding the delete of the desktop. Next, we have try a soft shutdown first, that with this option enabled, the system will attempt to perform a soft shutdown on the virtual desktop operating system. And then we have the put back to cache section, which has 2 options, no and yes. If we set it to no, when a user logs out of the desktop and the machine is not persistent, that machine will be destroyed and will not be returned to the cache to be used. If it is set to yes, when a user logs out of the desktop and the machine is not persistent, it will be returned to cache to be reused by more users. I will leave it on no as it is the default value. And now we have the service counting method, which is divided into standard and conservative. In the standard method, this counting method only takes into account the machines that are being created. And during the process of creating and destroying machines, it is possible to exceed the value of the maximum number of services to provide parameter of a service pool. To give an example of this counting method, if a service pool maximum number of service to provide parameter is configured to 5, after deleting a service there will be a moment where that pool contains 6 machines, which are 4 configured, 1 being created and then 1 being deleted. In the case of the conservative method, this counting method takes into account both the machines being created and those being deleted. So at no point will it be possible to exceed the value of maximum number of services to provide parameter of a service pool. To give another example, unlike the previous one, when we delete a service, the system will not generate a new service until that service is completely deleted, preventing it from exceeding the value of 5 existing machines in the pool. So well, I will leave it on standard, and now that this has been explained, we will click on save. So once the service provider and its base service are created, we are going to create an authenticator. So we will head over to the authentication section, then authenticators, and in my case, as you can see, I already have an authenticator named internal, and if we access it, I have an administrator user named UDSA and an administrator group named admins. So well, let's create an OS manager. We'll go to OS manager and select new. In this case, it will be a basic Linux one, since it is a basic template without a domain. So we will select the basic OS option. And once here, we will enter a descriptive name, and now in the advanced section, I'm going to specify how I want those machines to behave when the user logs out, defining whether they will be persistent, semi-persistent, or non-persistent. In my case, I'm going to specify that it should be non-persistent. So let's select the remove service option, and this will ensure that when the user exits the machine or logs out, the machine is deleted and they are given a new one. In addition, when we create this type of service, it is necessary to specify a maximum idle time, so that after that time passes, the machine closes and is deleted. So for example, I'm going to specify a time like 300, and once ready, we will click on save, and the OS manager will have been successfully created. Now we'll move on to the connectivity section, where before creating the transports, we are going to register our tunnel to be able to make tunnel connections, for example, via HTML5. So we'll head over to the tunnel section. We'll click on new and give our tunnel a descriptive name. We will enter the hostname or the IP of our tunnel. In my case, I'm going to use the IP, which is the following. And since it is an HTML5 tunnel, the default port of the HTML5 is 10,443. So once ready, we will click on save, and the HTML5 tunnel will have been successfully created. So now we can move on to creating the transport. And I'm going to create two transports, which will be a direct RDP one and a tunneled HTML5 one. I'll start with the direct one. I'll click on new, direct, and RDP. We will give the transport a name, such as RDP transport. In the credentials section, I'm going to enter some credential, such as the following. And furthermore, since the machine does not belong to any domain, I will check the without domain option. After that, in the other sections, we can leave everything as default. Parameter, display, Linux client, Windows, all as default. So once ready, we'll click on save, and now we'll create a tunneled HTML5 transport. So we will click on new, tunneled, and HTML5. We will specify a descriptive name for this transport, which in this case will be, for example, HTML5 transport. And here, for example, I am indeed going to give it a priority. The priority will basically be the order in which, if I put more than one transport in a service, it displays the first or the second one, depending on the priority I set. If I set a lower priority than the RDP transport, since I have two transports, the RDP one will appear first and the HTML5 will appear second, because it has a higher priority number than the RDP transport. So well, now we will head over to tunnel, and as we can see, the tunnel we created earlier has already been selected for us. But if you have more tunnels, you must select the tunnel you want. Now in the credential section, we will enter the valid credential for our Windows machines. In this case, they are the following. And I'm going to check the without a domain option, and in the parameters section and all the rest, I will leave it as default. So we'll click on save, and now that we have created these two transports, we are going to create the final service. So we'll head over to service pools and click on new. Now we will specify a descriptive name for the service pool. We will select the base service we created earlier, which is the following, and the OS we already created earlier will be automatically selected for us. But if you want to select a different one, we can click here and select the one we want. In the display section, we can leave it as default, and in advanced as well, we can leave it as default. And in the availability section, we are going to indicate, for example, that I want to select two machines in cache, so they are ready on the platform, and I want a maximum number of 5 available machines. We will select on save, and that's it. We are going to access the service, and we will see that in the publication section, our publication will start being created. In the meantime, until the publication status becomes valid, we are going to register the groups that can access to this service. So we'll click here on New and select the authenticator we want. In this case, I'm going to use the internal one and the admins group. We'll click on OK, and additionally, we are going to specify the transports, which are both the RDP and the HTML5 one. So let's go back to publications, click the refresh button, and see if it changes to valid. We can see that the publication has entered the Proxmox pool of videos 4.0, and if we keep refreshing, it is already in a valid state. So now we will go to the cache section, and the machines we want in cache should start being created, which in this case are 2. So here's the first one, and the second one is also being prepared. As we said earlier, under the base name, it starts with the base name Ubuntu dash and numerical characters such as 000, 001, and so on. Subsequently, machines will have 002, 003, and so on. While the machine is being created, first it will detect the version of the actor, which in this case is 4.0, and look, it's already in a valid state, and it also returns the machine IP. So let's refresh here to see if it returns the valid state and the IP for the second machine, and here it is. So once both machines are in a valid state, we will be able to access those machines without any problem. I'm going to test accessing one of them. I will log in with a user that is in the internal authenticator, which in this case will be UDSA and UDSA, and as you can see, since my user is within the internal authenticator, they will be able to see the service we just created, and in the connection section they will be able to see all the transport assigned to that service. And as we said, the HTML5 one will be shown in the second position. So well, let's do an example with an RDP connection, but it's worth noting that before making this connection, you need to have the UDS client installed on the client computer. The UDS client is what will actually generate the RDP connection and grant us access to the machine. So well, in this case, we already have the UDS client installed on our client machine, and we have the machine fully operational and ready. So well, having said that, we will click on RDP transport, we'll click on open, and then connect. And in this case, we now have a fully operational and ready machine. So now let's see, for example, how we had configured our OS manager when the user logs out of the machine. So let's log out from here. Let's go over here to assign services, where indeed the machine starts being deleted due to the user logging out, and you can see how the machine is being removed. On the other hand, we can see that in cache we already have both machine 1 and machine 2 in a valid state, and we have completely removed the 0001. So well, let's do one last connection, but with HTML5. So we will go back to the user mode and connect via HTML5. Here we see how our tunnel launches the connection in a new browser tab, and it will be accessing the machine successfully through the HTML5 protocol. So well, this has been all. We hope you liked the video, that it was helpful, and thank you very much for watching. Best regards.